Even if I don't know, I'm going to keep going. You know, that like, even though it felt bad, it wasn't like this feels bad and I don't belong here, I guess, you know, that like the feeling bad or the feeling like I had so far to go didn't ever lead me to a place where I wanted to stop, I guess. That I think I kind of felt okay for some reason, you know. Like I had distinctly remember improvising on Whisper Not at a combo performance my freshman year and sophomore year. And I got really lost in the changes. Couldn't like ground myself, and I just kind of kept going. And afterwards was just like, but there wasn't like a, you folded on stage and therefore don't deserve to be, you know, it was just kind of like frustrating and embarrassing, but I didn't ever feel like that had a bearing on my place, I guess.
This episode is Sara Gazarek, my dear friend and Grammy Award winning Sara Gazarek, who is a force of nature. And we got to talk about her relationship to music and the music business and how she navigates it all. Check it out. I'm here with Sara Gazarek. Sara, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, John.
We've known each other for a while, but I was thinking about it. I don't think we've ever sat down and actually talked.
We haven't.
Like this.
So, musically for moments. But
yeah,
really
musically
not like
for sure.
Heads and hearts bonking. This is exciting for me too.
So we'll do it in front of the public here.
Great.
And hopefully we'll actually sit down and continue this further after this.
Yeah.
So first of all, I've been watching everything you've been doing especially the last number of years, and you are so on mission. And I'm really taken by your drive, your fire, and your business sense. And you know your newsletter comes in and it's like boom, 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 on point. And I remember when you called me a couple of years ago to just ask me a couple of questions about, and you were just really on point and knew exactly where you wanted to go and just figuring everything out. But what I'm really taken with is how you've cultivated your career and navigated your career with integrity all the way through. And I can see even in the music that you're making that it's more and more it's more and more authentic, you know, to what I can just feel it and see it. This is, you know, for this moment, this is exactly what she wants to do. And there's no compromises there. She's going to have the discipline to figure out how to get it to the people and serve what the music is, but you're going to do it in integrity. So, you know, first of all, just brava. And one of the reasons why I would love to talk to you here for this podcast is for you to share that process to our listeners, for younger people that are coming up that are wanting to find their way and you know, the things that just in the mental space and heart space that they need to be thinking about to navigate these things.
Yeah. Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for that. What a great way to start the day. That's so beautiful to have such a heartfelt introduction from a musical hero of mine. It's an honor to be here. I'm so proud to know you and honored to be in a space where I get to watch you kind of do the thing that you do here in Florida and, you know, get to hear young people speak about who you are to them. And so I just applaud you for everything that you're offering to the future generations and specifically the students here at the Frost School. And I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
Sheesh. Well, I don't even know where to begin.
It's a broad question.
But I mean, I've been at it for, let's see, what is this, 2023? I've been at it since I was a senior in high school.
Which was in Seattle.
Seattle. Yeah, I came to this genre, like many young people, through public school music education. And I happened to attend a high school where the big band director was also a jazz musician. And the way that the funding worked at the time was that he also led the jazz choir. And so we weren't learning, you know, orchestrations of Somewhere Over the Rainbow in cummerbunds and matching outfits or whatever. We were actually listening to Miles Davis solos and transcribing things and writing lyrics to them. And so I'm really, really grateful for that perspective really early on in recognizing sort of like the value systems of the jazz community and the things that, that community kind of holds true to their heart and their soul moving forward. Whether or not I was able to really pick up on the kind of like context and small idiosyncrasies of like the depths of everything, it was really a beautiful way to kind of get going. And we were afforded a lot of different opportunities to work with different mentors. You know, I had a chance to talk to Ray Brown early on, and Joe Williams, and John Hendricks, and some of these living legends that I wouldn't have had the chance to speak with, let alone be aware of who they were, had I not been introduced to this art form pretty early on. And I think the thing that I was really taken with when I was in high school was the permission to be myself at a really early age. I don't know that it was actually spoken, but I remember feeling like there was this, permission to sort of allow myself to be brought to any story, that it wasn't a character. That like, while I was Meg Brocky in Brigadoon, you know, who's kind of like the belty alto, that I also was singing I Got It Bad with the big band at the essentially Ellington competition, and was challenged to make sure that I was thinking about what that lyric meant to me as a 17-year-old, and recognize that even as a 17-year-old that I had life experiences that could be brought to kind of any song, depending on the context. So I think that was the thing that really spoke to me early on. And my teacher had a really, really deep respect for the music and sort of demanded that we have that same respect. And I think that having that early on was really helpful. And then I auditioned for the jazz program at USC, and remember also applying to the University of Washington in their marine biology program, and kind of decided that whatever school cost the least amount of money at the end of the day would be like the universe's decision for me, which I think is a pretty bold move as a young person. But USC ended up giving quite a bit more scholarship money than the state school would have provided. So I made my way down to USC, and when I got there, admittedly so, could swing my butt off. Like, just because of the foundation that I had, I knew and felt that in my body, but I didn't know what middle C was. And so I spent a lot of my early collegiate education feeling incredibly embarrassed about the things that I didn't know, and didn't really feel like there was a space, and this is my own kind of like, I took it on myself, but I didn't feel like there was a space for me to admit that. Like, it was something that I kind of held onto and felt shame about on my own, and tried to work through in the practice room by myself, you know. And so we would be learning about these pretty complex concepts my freshman year. I was the only vocalist in the improv class that we had freshman year. And they were talking about 2/5s, and I didn't even know what a 2/5 was, let alone what scales, what diminished scale to play on a flat 9 chord, right?
All of them.
Yeah, right? I mean, that's the right answer. So I think that was tough. I think because I felt really like I didn't have anything other than my voice and my sense of swing. I felt like I didn't really have a lot to offer. And so I spent the first few years feeling really guarded, is the best way to say it. Like, I didn't open up to the idea that like it's okay to not know. And like there are a lot of things that I do know, and there are a lot of things that I know that other people don't know, and there are a lot of things that other people know that I don't know. And like, we're all just here. That's why we're paying, at the end of the day, hundreds of thousands of dollars to be in this space, to grow and to learn and to take risks and to feel comfortable taking risks. And that foundation is actually pretty important to develop at an early age. And I'm really proud of music programs who kind of start with that, right? That like, it's okay to embrace that like a student might learn things really differently than the way that the teacher is equipped to teach it, right? And like that's not on the student to take that on. Or that like, you know, that one instrument might have a different set of skills than another instrument, or one person's background and set of experiences would lead them to a place where they have different strengths, and that everyone is welcome in that space. I think that has led me to a place as an educator. My experiences as a young person have led me to a place as an educator where that's a pretty big priority for me, and making sure that my students feel like whatever they are and whoever they are and the things that they're bringing to the table are like exactly what the universe has decided that need to be brought in that moment.
It's so true. And those things that are your challenges become your gifts as a teacher
Yeah.
later on, because you know what it is to fight through that
Yeah.
and overcome.
Yeah.
And you can bring that to the student in a way, from an experiential way.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think the one thing that I had at that time that maybe kept me going was this, like, I don't think I've ever really suffered from, what do they call it these days? Imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome? Is that the thing? Imposter syndrome? Like, I think I just have always been pretty driven in feeling like, even if I don't know, I'm going to keep going. You know, that like, even though it felt bad, it wasn't like this feels bad and I don't belong here, I guess, you know, that like the feeling bad or the feeling like I had so far to go didn't ever lead me to a place where I wanted to stop, I guess. That I think I kind of felt okay for some reason, you know. Like I distinctly remember improvising on Whisper Not at a combo performance my freshman year and sophomore year. And I got really lost in the changes. I couldn't like ground myself, and I just kind of kept going. And afterwards was just like, but there wasn't like a, you folded on stage and therefore don't deserve to be, it was just kind of like frustrating and embarrassing, but I didn't ever feel like that had a bearing on my place, I guess, which I think is maybe, I don't know where that comes from, but.
Well, I mean, earlier, I was just noticing how you always seem to be on mission. And so I'm sure it comes down to something like that. Like, this is what I'm going to do here and what I'm going to experience. So I'm just going to keep at it and keep, it has nothing to do with what people may think about it,
right.
Or what's right or wrong. This is what I'm here to do. And that's foundational.
Yeah, I was just kind of chuckling internally because I had this flashback to earlier this past holiday season. I was with my niece, who's 6 at the time. And I can't remember what happened, but I said something about like quitting something. And she was like, Auntie Sara Gazarek, don't quit. Which like, is pretty bold for a 6-year-old to say, but I think it's true. I think that we are a family of people who are like, if I say I'm going to do this, I'm totally going to do it. And I said I would graduate with a degree in jazz studies. And so here we are. So even when I was in school, there was a shift at one point where it was like, okay, this stuff actually is starting to kind of make sense to me. And there is a sense here that like I am gaining something, right? Like it wasn't that before I didn't feel like I wasn't gaining something. It was like it all started to feel a bit more like digestible, instead of just so wildly overwhelming that I couldn't process it. It was like, okay, I can kind of taste this, And while I was in school, was really adamant that I didn't want to graduate with a lot of student debt. And so I was applying for a lot of different scholarships and financial aid and different awards so that USC would kind of take me seriously and give me more merit-based aid. And ended up winning a Downbeat Student Music Award, which I think Frost School is very acquainted with. I think there's a lot of that goes around here. And it was for the best collegiate jazz vocalist. And that opened a door for me that I couldn't have anticipated. There was a management company that was looking for a young artist to go on tour with this vocal jazz festival thing with Karin Allison and Diane Shore and Olita Adams. And because of that award, they like opened up the magazine, and I had a website at the time. And it was horrible. Like, I think I built it, but I had something for them to go see. And so they asked me to come on this tour. And so for my senior year, I was gone for a good third of the year on this tour with these incredibly talented musicians and learning firsthand how to talk to sound engineers and what to do when the merch gets lost and how to deal with lobby calls and all of this stuff that I could never have learned in the classroom. And I think that was probably the point in my life where I realized that I am a curious mind and I am interested in kind of that side of things, You know, like that doesn't bother me. It's not something that feels bad or feels gross. The idea of like being a touring musician and how to be professional and easy to tour with and lead my own band and provide the things for them that they need to feel comfortable, and understanding, you know, that this is sort of like an energetic life force that like whatever you put into the world is going to come back to you. And so, you know, that's the main thing that I kind of share with young people, is that a big part of why I'm a person who has a lot of music industry experience is that it was something that was thrust upon me really early. I had a booking agent, I had a manager, I had a record label before I graduated college. And it is a wild experience that, like, similarly, I don't think is the type of thing where anyone's path can be replicated or should be replicated. But I had a booking agent and I had a label and I had a management company before I needed one, if that makes sense. And then they were the ones who generated the need for it. And my first record was released with an independent recording company, but there was a massive budget behind it. And so I have access to what it feels like to work with, you know, a $100,000 tour release budget, just for promotional purposes and like touring support and all of that stuff. We toured on a tour bus for my first record. And there was like a stipend for the band, you know, they just paid the flat rate thing. And then every release and every tour that I've done since then has become more and more DIY, and kind of what most independent jazz musicians can kind of like attest to. So it's been a really eye-opening experience, but I feel like I sort of have insight into like just in terms of the business, because that was kind of the thing that you asked about. I kind of have insight into like most facets of the music industry at this point, which again is like because it's interesting to me, you know.
Right. You're curious about it.
Yeah.
You know, that is an ingredient that I think that we all need to add to our curiosity. Because a lot of times I think folks they just want to sing, they want to play, they want to write, and then you deal with the rest.
Yeah.
And definitely in this day and age, that's going to be very hard to sustain yourself that way. And something that really took me is that before all of this happened, you had the foresight to know when you were in college, that if you needed to create some more merit-based scholarship money, you had to play the game.
Yeah.
So you have to create some buzz for yourself and do the downbeat awards and do the things that people recognize as merit.
Right.
And you had the foresight to do that and to have a website already put up, even on your own power. And that's what led everybody to say, okay, this person has something that we know that we can build upon. You know, you took the initiative to create those foundations for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of folks early on are just not wanting to think about that yet, because they'll think about that later, but they go together.
Yeah. Well, and I really love that you said that I can't remember the verbiage that you used, but that it's like merit that is like basically currency in the world, right? That like even early on, I am grateful to have had a mentor in John Clayton who sort of reminded me that all of this stuff, this merit-based stuff, is currency. You know, that it's not necessarily indicative of my value. That like, I maybe have won that student music award, but it doesn't mean that I am the best collegiate jazz vocalist in the country, right? That like a panel of 7,000 people listened to every single collegiate jazz vocalist and somehow found it, you know. It just is oftentimes one person who's listening to whoever decided to submit in that moment, and for God knows why chose the people that they chose, and it happened to resonate with them. But I remember John saying something really early on about how like you can't control why people write good or bad reviews, that like you might look like their daughter, or you might have a voice that reminds them of their ex-wife, or they maybe had food poisoning when they came to the show. And that was really, really important advice for me early on, and has really helped me in recognizing that, you know, some of the best reviews, like when I got, there's a quote that I often use in my bios and stuff about how Sara may turn out to be the next important jazz singer from the LA Times, you know, and I remember seeing that and being like, great, soundbite, insert, but, and it was an honor to have somebody say that. But the beautiful side of that is that when the New York Times, on the other side, the cabaret writer in the New York Times said, the problem with the performance is the voice itself. That like in that moment, I read that and kept going and was like, okay, where's the soundbite? Oh, Sara Gazarek is an accomplished scat improviser and an engaging performer. Great. The entire review was really awful. Like I got ripped apart in this review, but I didn't stop for more than, I didn't stop. I just was looking for the soundbite because I was like, he didn't like it. Didn't resonate with him. I know I gave the best performance that I could give and that for what I do, it was like pretty great. And that it's not like Sara may well turn out to be the next important jazz singer, and the problem with the performance is the voice itself. Both exist in the same world, and that like my value can only be determined by me, and that I'm not fed by this and I'm not starved by that. It really just is what can go in my bio. Thank you. Moving on with the world.
Brava. Yeah, you need that detachment. You have to stay detached from it. It's just... and it's not just reviews. It's not just the business stuff. It's even people that come up to you after the show, right?
Yes.
And, some people may come up and say, that was some of the most heartfelt music I've felt you, and I was having a really awful year, and now I feel revitalized. Yeah. But you can't take it personally either. You have to just say, that's really interesting feedback. I wonder what it was that aligned with this person. Yeah. Just like somebody says, you know what, that, just, I don't know what the negative thing to say would be. And you just have to take that as feedback and say, okay, that's your opinion. But there's, I wonder what it was that made them trigger like that. It's just interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Both sides of it.
Right. And I love that kind of what you're alluding to is this idea of like, what can I take with that? What can I use with that? And does this resonate with me as something that I can
it's
run
still
with?
Valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
And even the idea of these awards as merit, even, I'm curious with the Grammy nominations now, it's all of a sudden people talk to you a little bit differently. People, it was my experience too. And there's part of it that in a way makes me just wonder, well, I'm the same person I was. I've been putting the same output out for years, and now you're talking to me differently. You're standing up a little taller when you talk to me. Now, what is that difference? And you just kind of look at it and go, interesting, and you see people's reactions to it. And I just go, interesting. Yeah. Very interesting. But it is definitely currency.
Yes.
And it's the way that I think about it is I have to go into it like a kid, I choose to play this game. It's a choice, and I'm going to play the video game, and I'm going to learn the rules, and just understand it. Okay, how do I get to level 8? Yes. Oh, that's cool. So you gotta like shoot that barrel over there. Yeah. Okay, let's shoot the barrel, and and sometimes I don't feel like shooting the barrel, and that's okay too. Right. But to be able to see it like a video game certainly helps me out. Yeah. To not take it all so seriously too.
Right. I have a friend also. Who's a musician who has just a different kind of like detection of success. And I have been really grateful to have had a relationship with her and close partnership with her in seeing what it looks like for a musician to not have the same set of goals that I have, She's a mom and she lives in not one of the major jazz hubs. She writes her own original music, she records albums, and she releases it. But there's not like this, well, if I don't play in these markets and I don't get these reviews and I don't get this and I don't push for that it's not a success, right? For her, and she's like a grown woman and a grown musician and is in her thing, that like that is the success, is truly just making the album and putting it out. And I don't resonate with that. That's not how I process things, but it has been really helpful to realize that like everyone is allowed to sort of figure out what they want from the experience and to go for it. And if the go for it looks different for one person and another person, that's beautiful. It's been interesting to watch for sure.
What's your go for it?
Well, as you said, it's like all of it. I think I am just a person who doesn't do things on a micro, I guess I should say I do things on a micro and a macro level, but I don't do things on like a half scale, you know, like everything that I do, I kind of throw 100% of myself into. We were talking about music video editing, one of the first pandemic videos that I produced for my group Sage. It was the first one that I did, and it took me 85 hours to do, just to edit this video, but I like wanted to get it to a point where it was professional looking, and it did. It was like one of those like Jacob Collier level, like crazy, like all of the drum fills were with like all of the small heads and like all the stuff. But I'm that way with everything that I do. I think that for me, I think that the thing that drives me now is wanting to collaborate with specific people and recognizing that the type of people that I want to collaborate with and the instrumentation that I want to explore and the things that I want to do, I just don't want to have barriers to that. You know, I don't want to feel like money or artistic standing or my accolades or my CV is like the reason why I can't do all the things that I want to do. I think that's probably the big drive for me. It's like I want to continue to grow, and continuing to grow for me is working with and learning from different people, which I have found to be incredibly rewarding and kind of like discovering who I am through the lens of like other collaborators. So I think that's something that drives me. But in terms of like what is success, I would feel really itchy if I released a record and that was it, you know, like I would feel like it was a waste of energy and musical like muse and relationships and time if I didn't push to make sure that that CD was in front of as many people as possible, or that album, I should say. I don't do CDs anymore. Who does? But yeah, and I think it has less to do with like I want to be famous and I want people to know who I am. That has actually very little to do with it. I think that idea of that makes me more uncomfortable than anything. Like I don't want to ever be in even if I'm like a few times in my life it's happened where I've been on a plane and someone's like, "Are you Sara Gazarek?" And I'm like, "Oh." Like it makes me really uncomfortable that people know me and I don't know who they are. But I think the thing that drives me, like truly drives me, is recognizing that whatever it is that you create might affect or heal humanity. You know, that like the times when, like I agree with you, when someone's like, "I loved the show, it was great," like that's one thing. But there've been a handful of times where I've received an email or a Facebook message from someone that was like, "I was contemplating suicide and discovered this song and I'm still here." Yeah. And those are the things where I'm like, if I don't push to make my music available to as many people as possible, I can't do that, right? If I just release it in a void, I won't be able to like I've only been working on healing myself, and that feels really selfish to me to like do the work to create and to like give through music and then just kind of hold on to it because I'm scared or lazy or tired or don't want to put the time in. You know, I think for me that's the big drive for sure.
I think it's really just whatever your vision is. To have a good understanding and awareness of exactly what that vision is, and then seeing it to its fullest. Yeah. You know, but everybody's vision is different. Yeah. So your vision is clear. Yeah. And so you're not going to stop until, you know, well, ever.
Yeah. I mean, it's been helpful to recognize that some things I'm really not in control of, you know, like right? I can't be in control of whether or not Jazz Times wants to have me on their cover. So to say, like, I'm going to be on the cover of a jazz periodical someday, like, that's not an attainable goal. But, like, I can be on top of checking in with my publicist more often than I feel comfortable in recognizing that, like, if I don't check in with them, that, like, I'm not working with them. I'm just kind of letting them work in a bubble, and it's not collaborative, and it's not going to be the best that it could be. So kind of making sure that I'm not in my own way in that regard, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's always having a clear destination, and it's okay to say, okay, well, this, being on the cover of whatever is a goal or an intention.
Yeah.
And
I like
I'm going
intention.
to do everything in my power to go in that direction, like row my boat toward that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be so rigid as to think that I know what's going to happen.
Sure.
I just know that I want to go in that direction. And then I always think about it like there's a North Star over there. And I love that North Star. And that's exactly, I'm just trying to go there with everything that I have. But I'm also aware that there are other stars. I'm flexible enough to understand that I never even saw this star, because if I hadn't gone in that direction with everything that I had, that star wouldn't have come into play. And this star is even better for me and more aligned with me. And so I changed my course.
I love that.
And I start going toward that with everything that I have.
Yeah.
So you can't be attached to any specific outcome.
Yeah.
Because that may not be the best outcome for you.
Right.
It's not, obviously it's not in alignment with where you're resonating.
Yeah. I love that. That's really beautiful.
So instead of being on the cover of that magazine, it just means you're on the billboard in, Times Square or something. It's like, oh, okay. Oh, so that's what it was. Okay.
Right.
So thanks for taking me toward that direction.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
So you obviously love collaborating with people.
Yeah.
And I know a number of the collaborators that you've been working with and made music with. It's amazing, including your band Sage, which is
you. Good job on pronunciation too. That's rare.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Oh good.
It's rare.
Good. And I just think the world of Erin in particular, and
yeah.
Janae and Amanda.
Yeah.
They're all really badass women. And I love that you brought them all together. I mean, I don't know how you all brought each other together, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was the person who initiated. So for those that don't know, Sage is a 4-women ensemble, writing, arranging collective. And all were independent composers and solo artists prior to Sage becoming a thing. And I had worked with Erin. Erin wrote backgrounds for my most recent full-length CD, Thirsty Ghost, for a couple of songs and sang backgrounds. And Amanda is sort of known in the vocal jazz community as being like one of the few, first of all, female composers and arrangers, but she also is one of the few who does like really contemporary writing that isn't necessarily rooted in sort of like the big band tradition, which is really, or like, how would I say this? Like, as somebody who really knows that tradition, like old school big band writing. What would you call that?
Okay, sure.
I don't know, like the bassy band, like all of the kind of like, we're going to do a shout chorus and we're going to do like a sax solo and we're going to have these like really strong voicings. And I think that there's contemporary big band writing that maybe is a bit more textural and kind of feels like there's permission to explore a lot of other different compositional elements.
Permission. Wow. I like that word.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I feel like Amanda comes from that world. And so does Erin. And Janae is maybe one of the best improviser, melody writer, incredible jazz musicians that I've come across. So it just happened that I was performing with Amanda at this jazz festival where she had orchestrated a number of my tunes from Thirsty Ghost for this festival, and this group kind of sang behind me, and it was just kind of shocking to hear what she came up with in a really short period of time. And I walked up to her afterwards and was like, would you ever want to? And it was so weird to me because I never would have imagined I would have said those words, but just her badassery and like how incredible she is as a person and her writing, like I just was overwhelmed and, wanted to be around her more. And she was thrilled, and Erin made a lot of sense. And they didn't know Janae, but I knew Janae. And I had a fan who had a rental property in Palm Springs. And I had written something on Facebook. And again, this is like, everyone should just do all the things because you never know what it's going to kind of like open for you. But I posted something about how like annoying it is that on Airbnb, you can't select that you want a piano. Like there are so many touring musicians who would love a piano and be able to say like, I want an igloo. I can, but I can't say I want a piano, right? Like more people need a piano than an igloo. So someone commented or maybe Facebook messaged me shortly thereafter and was like, I have a rental property that has a piano. If you ever want access to it, we could do like lesson trades or something. And so we did that, and we had a weekend together where we had a plan for like all of these things that we wanted to accomplish, of course, right? Like productivity, and just ended up bonding and like cooking and talking and listening to music and sharing stories and getting to know one another. And like really, truly, I mean, it was, again, the universe's way of forcing, whatever, opening up an opportunity for us to develop a really strong foundation of sisterhood. We wrote our first original composition, Desert Song, there. And that was the only single, I guess the first single that we released. And then that received our first Grammy nomination. And it was the only song we had out. It was totally independent. We recorded it live and like, took the audio and just put it on Spotify in the middle of the pandemic. And I really don't think that we would still be as unified and connected today if we hadn't focused on that sense of community and connection in that first meeting. I think if we had done the like brainstorm thing of what we wanted to do, we're like, Johnny will do a masterclass so we understand her values, and then Erin will lead us through some circle singing, and then Amanda will lead us through this arrangement, and then we'll swim in the pool together for 20 minutes, and then we'll have Erin make lunch while the rest of the girls are talking about what influences, it's like this super structured, really like, I don't know.
I see.
Busy kind of like get the work done thing instead of just focusing on the people and the relationships. Yeah, so I think that was a really important lesson early on, because I think we wouldn't have, if we just focused on the work, there wouldn't have been any reason to keep going once the pandemic hit, because we had this bond. It was like, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's bigger than the music itself.
Yes.
It's all tied into each other.
Yeah.
It's just life. It's the experience altogether.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
Okay.
We've already touched upon it, but I just want to see what you would say, how you would think about this. In music, because I find you have come to this place with beautiful authenticity and integrity. So what, at this point in your life, and it may change in 5 minutes, what are your values with music? And what are your intentions when you create music?
Yeah.
Even playing last night, or when you're going to make a record. It doesn't have to be anything specific, but how would you define your values and intentions in music making now?
I love that question. I really love that question. And it's something that I've thought about a lot. I think early on, my values were really rooted in the values of the mentors that I had been gifted a relationship with as a young person, and especially as a young person who really felt like I knew nothing. It was important early on for me to be open to, the perspectives of these masters who I was working with when I was in college. And then shortly thereafter, I was constantly being told by people that I was like young, and it was a gift that I was 22 and had a record out and was touring, and that I didn't really know what I was doing, kind of, like there was this kind of swirling narrative that at 22, there was almost an element of like, I don't belong here or don't know exactly what to be doing. And so I think I just embraced that beauty of instrument is really important, that's sort of the be all, right? Like intonation and quality of sound and consistency of sound is really important. And that your audience has come to see you to, I don't want to say be entertained, but maybe to feel better. And that it's really important to put on a consistent show where people feel like they've gotten their money's worth, and that the fact that they took out, money to have the babysitter and, drove and paid for parking and walked in and are now buying dinner, that like that's a gift, and that you have to make sure that like it's funny and polished and good, and that they, really felt all the things and you've checked all the boxes. I think that was something that I held on to for a long time. And there was a period in my life, maybe 8 years ago, where I had this working band and was kind of like holding on to these value systems, and also was going through something where my life was kind of imploding, where my primary relationship was kind of not what I thought it was going to be. And my mom was in an almost catastrophic car accident and like flatlined in the helicopter on the way to the hospital. And for whatever reason was put in a position where the decision was made that when I had come to Seattle, I had a West Coast tour that would go from LA to Oakland to Seattle, and that it was okay, even though she was in the ICU, to like wait till I got to Seattle, do the shows. And then when I saw her in the ICU, had a conversation with my family who were like, your mom would want you to do the show. And I did the show and, did the polished thing and told the jokes, and just felt like I was like abusing my soul when I was doing that. And walked out on stage for the encore, and someone was like, do unpack your adjectives, which is like one of the songs. I mean, it's like a Schoolhouse Rock song on my most recent album at the time. And I just had this moment where I like in the flash was like, you preach about authenticity to your students all the time. And you preach about how this is an art form that prides itself on authenticity and communication and reflection of, humanity in the moment, not so that your audience sees you, but so that they see themselves, right? And this is something that I talked about all the time with my USC students and any workshops I did or festivals I did. And I just had this moment where I was like, what are you doing? And I walked out on stage and heard that. And I was like, listen, in lieu of an encore, I'm going to ask that everybody please pray for my mom, who's in the ICU right now, less than a mile away. She's in a car accident. Can we take a moment of silence for my mom? And I'm like sobbing as I'm saying this. And it was a really powerful moment in recognizing that like humanity is at the core of this art form, and that I am human, and that everyone also is human. And that if I'm not embracing the spectrum of humanity, what am I doing, right? Like, what is the genre that I've dedicated my life to? And it took me a good 3 years to like really dismantle it, right? And to like allow the person who I am, like the multidimensional person that I am, to actually be reflected in the music, and to not feel like everything needs to be beautiful, because what is beauty? Beauty isn't perfection.
And that itself is beautiful.
Yeah, truly. And that I am not perfect, and that I don't know everything, and I don't want to know everything.
And that you are perfect and you do know everything.
Yeah, it's both, right? And that like it all is what it needs to be. And so the next record that I made took me about 5 years to make, and I wasn't creating for the purpose of making a record, which was new. I was collaborating with new people and writing original music and just like reading poetry and going to therapy and, being with myself. And and then we made Thirsty Ghost. And that one is a snapshot of that 5-year period. Every single song speaks to a specific experience, and everything comes from this place of like the full spectrum, right? Like truly the full spectrum. Whereas like prior, it was just like whatever's sunny, right? And
Julian is so great from that.
Thank you.
From that record. The whole record's great.
Thank you. Yeah, but it was important to recognize, and Distant Storm, which originally is called When It Rains, the Brad Mehldau song, the lyric is sort of encapsulates that that concept that like I had been holding on to, like whatever is sunny, but like if you've ever been in a place where like there's only sun, like truly only sun, there's nothing that can survive. Like truly nothing can survive. And that in order to have life, there needs to be water. And what do we associate with water? Like rain and storms and like the distribution of water, or like an underlying current of like, moving something underneath the ground. So that's the analogy with that song. But I would say these days, long-winded answer to say that these days the thing that I would say that I value is just like truth. Like full stop truth. And that can and should manifest for me in trying to chase however I can be present in the moment when I'm making music, which is hard, but I try to chase it. It manifests in a practice and a relationship with my instrument that feels more like full, broad spectrum instead of just beauty, but like all the colors, having access to that when I'm performing. It manifests for me these days in a lot of different people that I'm making music with, and not just like one set of people, but a lot of people. And I think a lot of intention, right? Like having a relationship with the songs that I've chosen and why I've chosen them, recognizing that the why probably will change often. But understanding like, why is this in 5? Why 5? Why does it have this repetitive motif? Why does it open into this dynamic place in that moment, right? At least in the original iteration of the arrangement. In the composition, like I originally, when I first started doing writing, I didn't give myself permission to write melody and harmony because my strength is words, and that is like my improvisational place, that like being emotionally present in this improvisational sphere was where I felt really comfortable, and like the delivery of the lyric and the phrasing and the vocal quality and all of that stuff. So lyrics was my thing, and like the part that spoke to my body, but that like I would leave the harmony and the melody to, people who are masters of that. And I think in the pandemic, I realized that like music is not a competition, and that it's not about only allowing masters or people who have worked on it a long time to be the ones to contribute in that sphere. So I pushed myself to write. The first thing that I did was take a poem and just set it to music and only be in charge of the melody and the harmony. And even when I wrote it, there was no, like, it was just colors and shapes. It was not like, and this chord is this, and then we move to this chord because it's this Roman numeral that then resolves to the, it was truly just like, I wrapped the song and was like, I don't know. And maybe spent a month with like who knows? I don't know what that is. And then recently wrote another song where I wrote the lyrics and the melody. And that was the first time that I had ever done that. But I think that, yeah, I guess that's the thing in terms of values that I feel these days that I'm chasing, is just kind of recognizing that like the communication and the honesty, however that shows up, for me is the goal. It's like continue to push myself to explore and to become more and more honest with myself, and to have the tools to be able to continue to be more honest with my relationship with music.
Sara, I appreciate your willingness to continue to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of vulnerability, and it takes digging into those shadows and embracing them as them being just as important as every other aspect of being human. Yeah. And I mean, those are words to say, but it really is courageous. And when I see people doing it, I understand how vulnerable and exposing it is. Not even thinking about the outside world, but just to yourself. It takes a lot of strength. And so I see it. I see you doing it. And of course is expressed in the words too. But I'm very much looking forward to seeing, just following your music as it continues to go deeper.
Thank you. That means a lot coming from you, John.
And I thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you.
I think this is going to be really impactful for a lot of people that follow you, and new people who don't even know you yet, to discover where you are now and where you're going.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Much gratitude. My pleasure.
Well,
Thanks
and for what it's worth, when I said that, there's this long list of collaborators. Your name is like very much towards the top of that list. So it's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Much gratitude, everyone, for checking out the podcast. Please do subscribe and follow and like and add a comment. as it really helps us expand and grow and keep us all connected together. So I appreciate it very much, and I send you much, much, much love. I'll see you on the next one.